Добрый день, меня зовут Огнев Василий.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vasily Ognev.
Компания
I work as the lead of identity at Red Security. And today we'll talk about MFA, multi-factor authentication, and what exactly is this?
Многофакторная аутентификация
Multi-factor authentication is basically
используется не
is a technique which is
аутентификаторов.
use at least two authenticators. And the main point here is to make sure that the access to the system is granted with the critical information only to the person who has the right for it.
Фактор — это, конечно же,
The main factor here is obviously factors, multi-factor. So these are the factors in MFA. These are the ways to check the
не 4, не 5, не 6,
authentic
не
person. There are only three main factors.
Это то, что мы
The first one is knowledge factor. This is what we usually use. This is our passwords.
используем то, что мы
We can also use
какой-нибудь секрет.
something we have in our head, maybe our
Желательно
hidden question, secret question, maybe some personal story, which cannot be replicated. Second factor is the ownership. Maybe the person owns, it can be a token, it can be some kind of physical representation, it can be a tool, it can be a device, it can be a smartphone, which receives a PIN code or SMS message.
человек им владеет.
So your phone, your smartphone, will be a part of two-factor authentication. And finally, the third one is biometry. This is what's connected with the person. It's fine prints, retina, face structure, everything connected with it.
Единственный нюанс, то, что
Here is a little caveat that
не использовать отдельно, а совместно.
it is recommended not to use biometry only on its own. It's better to use it combined with either of other two factors. And another point, suppose you enter a password or you
Номера приходит СМС. И в том
you receive an SMS message on your phone. In both cases,
аутентификация.
it's a single factor authentication. In the first one, you use knowledge. In the second one, you use ownership.
Используется
If
пула,
those two factors are used from a single pool, maybe use the password
пин-код,
and you use a PIN code, it is still a single factor authentication because they use the same factor, not a different one. And finally, if you use all three, knowledge, ownership, and biometry,
то это все равно
and
многофакторная аутентификация.
that will still be multi-factor authentication. It's not three, it's not four, there are just
По этапам.
single-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication.
Попробуем вас немного
And here we will test you a little bit.
условно из мезозоя. И хотел бы у вас
I took a few factors from very old age. So individual, someone's scent, personal scent, what kind of factor is this?
биометрия.
What do you think? Is this
Так,
biometry?
с правильной последовательностью звуков. Какое-то
If it's a secret roar with the correct sequence of sounds,
отлично.
yes, this is the knowledge.
Раковина аммонита.
And if it's
Владение
some
великолепно.
kind of
Рисунок углем на
ammonite passed down the generation, yes, this is the ownership. If it's
знание, совершенно верно.
picture
И узор на чешуе
from old times,
биометрия.
this will be knowledge, and scales would be
Царапинами.
biometry. A stone token with unique scratches. That will be an example of ownership. So these are simple but still very effective
Немного
ways to define different factors. Now we'll go back a little bit in history, and I would like to give you a few examples how MFA developed.
мазками.
But I will go in big leaps. So
Технически, конечно же, пароли применялись уже давно. Они
obviously we used passwords for quite a lot. Usually they were used by sentries or by military personnel to tell friend from foe. But for the first time it happened in somewhere in 1960s, at the Massachusetts Institute of Technologies, MIT. Armando Carbata dealt with computers based on IBM, and in order to use them correctly, he created this password protection. But what usually happens, his own assistant was able to copy all those passwords in order to use the system outside dedicated time. So once we started the age of passwords, at the same time we had the age of, let's say, hackers who stole the passwords. And ideally, we do understand why we want to put down the passwords on a paper and put it right next to the computer, which is protected by this password. And this is actually not a very bad idea if you hide this paper with the password and you do not put it in your notebook on PC or smartphone. In the 1990s, we have the first glimpses of single-factor authentication, tokens, and secure ID. And by the way, the tokens themselves gave an old name for multi-factor authentication because it was a factor of ownership and it was combined with PIN code, which is a factor of knowledge. Previously, it was called two-factor authentication, but multi-factor authentication basically now becomes the main name, so to say. In 2000s, the age of SMS messages came, and this is what happened with most banks and everything in financial sector used SMS messages. In 2010s, biometry started to develop very actively. They used mobile devices, and Apple was one of the pioneers. And thanks to the Apple technologies like Face ID, Touch ID, biometry actually started to develop and became a mass product. At the same time, alliances were formed between Google and Microsoft, and they worked on open standards, A2, SSO, U2YF, and so on. The classical example of those tokens would be UBK tokens. Maybe you saw them, maybe you heard about them. Some of our developers started to produce FID2 tokens, and you can use them for web authentication. And finally, in 2020s is passwordless authentication. This is authentication which does not use your password. It uses digital keys and biometry. The FIDA key is the classic example, or UBK with biometry on board. And Google Authenticator is basically an application on your phone which uses the same digital keys and the same sets of biometry. And this is currently the way technology develops. At the same time, we get global attacks on passwords, on the systems. More than 66%, more than two-thirds of Russians in 2004 were attacked. By attacked, I mean, obviously, cyber attacks. And many emails, many platforms were hacked due to weak passwords. And the main problem is the lack of multi-factor authentication and lack of digital hygiene. Maybe using simple passwords, or it can be a single password for all devices, for all platforms. This could be phishing emails or sending your information in questionable websites. Currently, these cyber attacks are aimed at social media, banking applications, and personal emails. What do we have when we use MFA? According to statistics, only 43% use multi-factor authentication for protection. In corporate, this is a little bit higher, but we cannot say that this is a rule. It's more like an exception. At the same time, a while ago, both Microsoft and Google had yearly annual reports, and MFA actually protects from active cyber attacks on accounts in more than 99.9% of the cases. And this is true.
Если посмотреть на MFA с точки зрения типов
If we take a look at the MFA in terms of the types of the authenticators, then
СМС.
the weakest one is SMS authentication. It's easier to intercept, both in technical ways, and you can also clone a SIM card. And recently, almost all your applications actually take a look at your SMS messages, and there is a lag in time and ability to actually send those messages. So there is a certain time frame for potential cyber attack. It's better to use applications. You probably know about this Yandex Key, MTS code. There is an application from Google. I recommend you use those applications. You have a physical token, usually PTI tokens, which are used in corporate, and you have UBK tokens, which are covered by FIDA 2, and it's used for web authentication. Those tokens are considered more safe and more secure, but those tokens are not exactly very good in terms of usability. What the future holds for us? Probably algorithms will improve for Face ID, face recognition, for retina, for fingerprints, for veins, and so on. There will be more dynamic methods. Maybe it will be EEG, electroencephalogram. Maybe there will be some kind of dynamic here. Well, currently, the dynamic is not 100% correct, but it can provide with certain behavioral image. And the same behavioral approach will increase, will improve geography, time, different ways of how people behave, or that will be used in order to verify the person. There will be new haptics, smartwatches. Smartwatches, obviously, by Apple. They use smartwatches for an extra step for authentication. But probably there will be other wearable gadgets, maybe smart rings, and those wearables will have dynamic methods and techniques of authentication which will make them more secure. And obviously, there will be an extra area of hardware keys. Probably there will be chips and different implants, and they will make those cyber attacks less successful. And finally, a few pieces of advice for cybersecurity. You should use long, complex, unique passwords for different applications, for different systems. If you have problems with your memory, maybe you should use a phrase in Russian, but you use it, type in English, and a few more digits, a few more symbols. You create those long phrases, you put it down on paper, and you store it maybe in a safe, and you use it for the correct accounts. Or maybe you can use your Google account, VK account, in order to use this system. And try to avoid SMS, especially for key accounts. SMS messages is actually the weakest link here. And you try to use application instead of SMS messages, or maybe hardware keys if you have them available. You should try to enable MFA, especially for important accounts, especially for those connected with finances. MFA should actually be top-tiered. But I would say that big, long, complicated password is the best way to protect your system. And finally, you can have antivirus, where you can do so and update your operating system so that you will cover and you have patches for vulnerabilities and exploits. Usually this is the way to go, and by doing so we can protect your device. And that's basically all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that this small but presentation is actually useful. This is exactly cybersecurity. This is what we want. This is what we love. But Vasily, this was fire. Thank you. Thank you. Red Security, Vasily Ognev, lead at Identity. We have a few spare minutes here. From what I can understand, and I actually really like this, from the beginning of this year, we usually work as contractors, but for us it's very important. This is what we earn, this is what we maybe want to send it somewhere, and I have this token, I have this USB card, and I really enjoy this when I put it to, when I plug it in and it starts to shine, and I can see all of that, and do not have to do anything with all these papers. I do not have to wait for anyone to send this, and all that happens automatically. You're talking about chips, you're talking about this. This is what the most secure one. Yes, and I would like to say just a few words. The tokens are the first passwordless authentication. Technically, the main aspects of authentication happen through crypto algorithms, and you only present the PIN code from the token. And then basically anything happens without any passwords using crypto algorithms. And now we have keys that use your biometry, and this is the next step for true passwordless protection.
A token that uses biometrics? How does it work? Well, you push on that token and then it asks you to sign this. Can you carry it with you? Yes, you can. Or you can use it when you, for instance, need to perform specific activities. It's like spitting on the stamp before putting it, right? And basically people used to wear rings with stamps. And you need to preheat wax and then seal it with your ring. And here you spit on a thing and it sends it to space, and then the document gets signed. Well, of course, we don't trust things, and I would use MFA everywhere. And then passwords. As a linguist, I can say that, yes, we know all these words and phrases, and right, you can use long phrases in a foreign language. You can pick in a quote you like. And then you can use capital letters and small letters, and then use digits and punctuation, question marks and exclamation marks as well. Right. And then people say that, of course, putting down your password on paper is better compared to saving and storing your passwords on your devices. Right. It is safer, especially for those devices that you don't use often. And if you use something often, then you need to memorize the password. Right, I remember helping my mother with that. Thank you so much. 100% cyber secure. Vasily, thanks so much.